Speaking of making some sense, that would be KDWN news anchor John Schaefer, who was going to give us the latest from a local's perspective. John, thanks for being here. What is happening in the state of Nevada? What is the latest you could tell us?
Well, just about 35 minutes ago, the Trump campaign here in Nevada held a press conference. They announced a lawsuit. They're asking for Nevada to stop counting improper mail-in votes. They firmly believe that there are many voters in a group of mail-in voters that are not proper voters. They've received reports of many irregularities across the valley, and they say the lawsuit will be filed in federal district court in Las Vegas, asking a judge to stop the counting. They believe non-residents have been allowed to vote, and votes that were cast under the name of deceased people have been cast. They also say they've located a voter who was unable to cast their vote because someone had already voted under her name. Also at this hour, the Secretary of State's office is releasing more numbers in Nevada. We're keeping an eye on that. And as you said, at 10 o'clock, the Clark County Registrar of Voters, Joe Gloria, will release numbers. Yesterday, Gloria said in-person early voting and Election Day ballots have already been counted in Clark County. What's left to count are mail ballots that were dropped off at voting centers Tuesday, mail ballots still being delivered, provisional ballots, electronic ballots from residents who are overseas or disabled, and special ballots for new residents. Mail-in ballots in Nevada can be counted through November 10th, as long as they are postmarked by November 3rd.
And, John, we have some breaking news. CNN is reporting that the state of Nevada, Joe Biden has now increased his lead to 12,000 votes. That is a big deal. That's from, I think it was somewhere around 7,000 or 8,000, wasn't it?
7,500.
Yeah.
7,500.
So that's a big deal. That 4,000 votes right there could be the difference. We don't know.
It really depends on how much of the vote is left. There was only 75% of the vote out with that 7,500 number.
Well, 4,000 is a big deal. Take it or leave it. 4,000 is a big deal. Before I have to ask you, John, I was watching that press conference that you were just alluding to that happened maybe about, 10 or 15 minutes ago. There's a guy up there speaking, and, you've been in the news business a long time. I have. I was a reporter for 10 years. There's a guy that's speaking and giving information, and then everyone in the media is like, what's your name?
Right.
What's your name? The guy wouldn't give his name, and he said, you're just here for information.
Right.
First of all, we have no idea who you are. How do we know if what you're saying is credible when you won't even give us your name? That leads me to believe he doesn't want to give the media his name because what he's saying might not be true.
There's actually two people at the press conference that wouldn't give their name when the media asked who they were.
Have you ever heard of that before, where somebody holds a press conference and they refuse to give the media their name?
No.
That's the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
And you think they're not going to figure out? All we have to do is ask someone else in the crowd, hey,
Right.
what's that dude's name? And the person's not going to think to not tell you.
We know who Matt Schlapp is. His wife has been on our show before. We knew who that was. He didn't give his name either, by the way, but we all know who he is. He's a national guy. How can you hold a press conference?
Both these guys were in the Trump campaign that did this?
I have no idea who they are.
They claim that they are part of the Trump campaign.
I know Jason Miller.
Jason Miller did not do the press conference.
He wasn't part
Adam
of it.
Laxalt did the press conference, the former attorney general.
But the next...
Laxalt, Grinnell,
and then
Schlapp.
the two other people.
Was Trump
who
there
didn't
too?
give the names. No.
He was not there. Okay.
No, this was a press conference in Nevada with about maybe 10 people.
Yeah.
And there was maybe 4 or 5 members of the media, maybe more. And when these two people are done speaking, you have all these members of the media. What's your name, sir? What's your name? And his response was the dumbest response I've ever heard in my life. He goes, "You're just here for information." I mean, talk about unprepared, unprofessional. How could anybody take anything you say with any piece of credibility when you won't even tell the media who you are or what your position is? I don't know. I just find that's all you need to know. I mean, and by the way, even Brian Kilmeade went on the air before he went off 15 minutes ago and said, we got nothing out of that press conference. He was talking about that press conference. And guess what? Brian Kilmeade's right. Well, John, thanks for the update. I know it's going to be a very busy next couple days. We hope that I'm hoping, when do you think we're going to learn who won Nevada? I'm hoping today.
I don't know if they can count, if it's still going to be this close and we can count mail-in ballots through November 10th as long as they're postmarked by the 3rd, then I'm saying we're not going to know about Nevada till the 10th. But all one of the other states has to do is go in favor of Biden, and it's enough for him to win.
Exactly.
So
and it
the
doesn't
longer
matter.
we wait, the less important Nevada becomes.
Well,
unless it gets down to 263 to 263 all of a sudden, and we're the only state left.
But that's very well based on what happens in Arizona, because on CNN, if Nevada goes to Biden, then they don't call him the winner. Fox does, because CNN doesn't have Arizona in Biden's favor. Fox does, and that was called way too early, as we know. So I think that regardless, Nevada still remains important because we're not going to know about Arizona. And Trump, I think Trump's down by 60,000 with 400,000+ votes out left in that state.
Right. Well, like I said, me personally, I don't really care what network calls anything. All I care about is facts. When it's over with, It's
well,
over.
Well,
with.
then how do you make that decision? If one network says it's over and one network says it's not over,
I
then
don't
how do you make that
I don't-
decision?
I don't make.
How about no one calls it
Yeah.
until we count all of the votes? Once every single vote.
I'm totally okay with that.
I get California
Yeah.
and New York. There is
you're
not.
right.
It doesn't matter how many people mailed in their ballots. The Republicans are not going to overcome Joe Biden's lead.
Right.
But in all the states where it's close, don't call any of the states.
I agree with you. In a perfect world,
Yeah,
nobody.
it's the same thing as the networks when it's
Listen,
not this close.
This is-
calling all the East Coast states, and then the people in the West are like, "Well, why should we go vote now?"
Listen, we knew that this was going to happen.
Yeah.
We knew that Donald Trump would have a lead, but once they started counting mail-in ballots, obviously the Democrats, Joe Biden, has a huge advantage there. What I don't like is that Pennsylvania has now announced that tomorrow or today they're not counting any votes today until tomorrow. That is unacceptable.
Well, do you know why, Brian? Because mail-in ballots, expected mail-in ballots, went from 2.5 million to 2.9 million since November 3rd in Pennsylvania, and that right there could be the difference in Pennsylvania. The Trump campaign called themselves winner of that yesterday, and Trump made a tweet probably 15, 20 minutes ago that said no ballots should be counted after Election Day.